Revealed, Millionaire's mother pleads with girlfriend to stop cutting hair as son's shocking truth unfolds. Jake sat on his couch, the soft light of autumn filtering through the window and illuminating the canvas in the corner of his cramped apartment. Each brushstroke captured a dream he had abandoned, now hidden behind the corporate grind of his suburban Ohio job. His heart sank as he thought of the impending deadline at work, the uninspiring meetings, and the hollow acknowledgement from his boss. He could almost feel the town closing in around him, like the walls of his life were slowly inching closer, choking the remnants of his artistic spirit. "Why can't you just focus on stability, Jake?" His mother, Martha, gently challenged during their nightly phone calls. Each word was layered with a love that sometimes felt more like a burden. She sacrificed everything for him, molded her life around his artistic aspirations, constantly echoing her worries about financial security. He loved her for this. Yet every time she pushed him to work harder, he felt suffocated by her unyielding expectations. "Jake, you need to provide for yourself for your future." But what about his dreams? What about the art he longed to create? Just when the weight of his reality seemed unbearable, he met Lily. With her vibrant hair and unapologetic persona, she was everything he yearned to be: fearless, creative, alive. She shattered the mundane monotony with her free-spirited energy, igniting flames of inspiration within him that he thought had long extinguished. But with the thrill of their whirlwind romance came turmoil. Jake found himself standing at the crossroads of family loyalty versus the life of an artist he always wanted. The deeper he fell for Lily, the louder Martha's voice echoed in his head, warning him of the perils that awaited any dreamer unanchored by logic. One crisp autumn evening, Jake's breath caught in his throat as Lily transformed her appearance. She was set to cut her hair into a cascade of curly, golden locks, a bold, defiant act of self-expression that made him both excited and terrified. Would this be the moment he needed to embrace who he truly was? Just then, Martha entered the room calling Jake's name, instantly sparking tension. He could sense her dread radiating through the door. "Jake!" She recognized Lily's figure, and her eyes widened. "You can't be serious about this." In that moment, the room crackled with intensity. "Martha," Lily snapped back fiercely, "Jake needs to be true to himself. You of all people should know what it's like to sacrifice your passions." As words collided, Jake remained paralyzed between both women, the pulse of their clashing ideals heightening the pressure around him. The weight of their dreams and fears rested heavily upon him, anticipation suffocated by anxiety. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Lily's confidence contrasted fiercely with Martha's desperation, and Jake felt the walls of their expectations constrict around him. Could he forsake the safety of his current life, risking it all to reclaim his art? As the air thickened with unresolved tension, a sudden ring at the doorbell shattered his thoughts. An invitation had arrived for him to showcase his work at a renowned local gallery, the opportunity he had both wanted and feared. Panic set in as he gripped the invitation tightly, knowing he stood at the threshold of a life-altering choice. The weight of his mother's worried gaze locked onto him, a mixture of loving concern battling with unyielding fear. Across the room, Lily's expectant eyes urged him to step forward into the unknown, drawing breath into the desires he'd repressed for so long. Torn between what was safe and what could set him free, the moment screamed for resolution. Just then, his phone buzzed, a message from an old mentor, a figure from his past holding a secret that could change everything. Jake's heart raced as he glanced at the phone, the familiar name flashing on the screen. It was Ethan, the mentor he had once idolized, a name that carried both promise and nostalgia from a time when Jake's artistic ambitions felt within reach. Ever since he had taken the corporate route, Jake had kept his distance, believing he was unworthy of mentorly guidance in a field he had spurned. Yet now, faced with uncertainty about everything he had taken for granted in his life, the prospect of reconnecting sent a tremor of hope through him. The invitation to the gallery was still clutched tightly in his other hand, its edges slightly crumpled, a tangible reminder of what was at stake. Should he reply to Ethan? Should he abandon this delicate moment of tension hopelessly held on the edge of shifting realities? The juxtaposition of Lily's fiery determination and Martha's unwavering love echoed loudly in his mind, pulling him in conflicting directions like a frayed string threatening to snap. "Who is it?" Lily's voice startled him from his internal turmoil. It's Ethan," Jake stammered, unable to fully articulate the whirlwind of emotions that surged through him at that moment. "Your mentor from art school? You should talk to him." "He's probably reaching out for a reason," Lily encouraged, her features lit with excitement. Her enthusiasm, though encouraging, both exhilarated and unnerved him. He hesitated, debating whether rekindling this connection would lead to greater clarity or only more confusion. Martha's voiceless worry filled the air, a realization settling heavily upon his shoulders. He needed to make a decision, and soon. The gallery invitation offered a lifeline, a chance to resurface into the artistic world, but what if it came at the cost of his mother's safety and well-being? What if he failed, confirming all her fears? Every time he had succumbed to her expectations, that artist inside him had retreated further into a shadowy corner of his mind, starving for light. With a deep breath, he set the phone down on the table, forcing himself to look at both women in the room. Their strength sparked like flint in his mind, illuminating the anxious space he found himself in. "I have to figure this out," he finally declared, the need to assert himself echoing in his voice, though uncertainty draped his words. "Then you have to go for it," Lily insisted. "Take the leap, Jake. This is your chance to prove to yourself that you can pursue your art." She stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with encouragement, and Jake could feel the magnetic pull of possibility. "But what if I don't succeed?" he murmured, a feeble protest against the rising tide of ambition. "Then you'll learn. And you'll grow. Isn't that what life's about?" Lily replied, her passion igniting a flicker of defiance within him. Perhaps she was right. Failure didn't have to be the end. It could be the beginning of embracing who he truly was. Jake's grip on the gallery invitation tightened. Ethan's message still loomed unanswered, beckoning him home to his art. Suddenly, he understood that life wasn't just about meeting expectations, including his mother's. It was about risk, discovery, and wielding creativity as a tool for empowerment. "I think I want to meet Ethan again," Jake admitted, his voice shaking slightly, but firm nonetheless. "Maybe he can guide me through this." Lily beamed, but a shadow crossed her face. "Just remember, Jake, don't lose yourself in his vision for you. Make it yours." Before he could respond, another buzz from his cell phone drew his attention, and dread coursed through him. Was it Martha now urging him to reconsider? As he glanced down, his breath caught something unexpected had arrived in the message. The urgency of the moment wrapped itself around him as he stood at the precipice of rediscovery and confrontation. What did Ethan know that could change everything? The time had come to face the truth about who he was. But how far was he willing to go to unlock the door to his dreams? The buzz of Jake's phone still hummed in the air like a lingering note in an unresolved chord. He locked eyes with Lily, whose eager expression was suddenly shadowed by the weight of expectation. The message remained unread, pulsating with a promise and an edge of urgency that echoed his fear and desire. Taking a breath to steady himself, he reached for the phone, hesitating briefly. This could be more than just an invitation to reconnect. It felt like a challenge. The flickering light illuminated the intimate contours of his hand, a reminder of every brushstroke he had long denied. With a deep breath, he opened the message from Ethan. "Jake, I've seen your recent work. Let us talk. I believe we can reignite your passion. Meet me at the gallery Friday at 7. The invitation wasn't just about art. It was a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. But with every upswell of hope came a swell of anxiety, flooding his thoughts with what could be and what might not. He knew that to accept this invitation meant facing the parts of himself he had suffocated in corporate monotony. "Are you going to respond?" Lily asked, her eyes imploring him to seize this moment. Jake nodded, though uncertainty knotted in his stomach. "I will. I just need to figure out how to say it. I mean, what if I can't impress him? What if I really have lost my skill? Jake, you're not expected to be perfect. "This is about you finding your voice again," she said, firm yet compassionate. Her belief anchored him briefly, yet the enormity of the task laid before him was a looming specter. Confronting Ethan would inevitably force him to wrestle with his past choices that had foregone oil paints and canvases for meetings and graphs. As he scrolled through Ethan's previous messages, filled with encouragement and fervor, doubts whirled in his mind. Maybe he had been too disconnected, too afraid to engage. Each hesitation felt like a brick wall he had built to protect himself, yet now it seemed to block the path to what could be. Taking a leap meant risking vulnerability, a concept Jake had skirted in favor of stability. But hadn't he also learned that vulnerability could serve as a powerful canvas for transformation? "Maybe I'll send a simple yes," he murmured, boxing himself in with the decision, but also liberating himself from indecisiveness. The words floated in the air like mists prepared to lift. The idea of stroking his fingers across a canvas again, or even a paper sketch, sent a rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. Suddenly, his mother's face drifted into his thoughts, full of love, yet layered with concern. Jumping into the unknown could mean making waves in her protective world. But if he voiced his desire, he opened the door not just for his own exploration, but also for understanding. He could invoke dialogue that hadn't existed for years, risking the space he had cultivated with her. "Okay, I'll do it," he said, the determination rising in his voice. "I'm going to meet him." Lily's smile radiated warmth. "That's the spirit. Just remember to stay true to yourself." As Jake composed his response, he felt the pulse of creativity begin to flutter beneath the surface of his consciousness. With every keystroke, he pushed past the confines he had constructed. The words flowed freely, a stark contrast to the weighed silence he once carried. "I'll see you on Friday, Ethan. I'm ready to explore the possibilities." Still feeling the weight of the decision, he sent the text and felt an immediate sense of lightness. This small act marked a shift, an initiation into rediscovery. He stepped into the living room, feeling the air shift around him, charged with new energy. Martha looked at him with curiosity, sensing the change in his demeanor as he moved to prepare for dinner. There was an unspoken question in her eyes, one he hadn't yet figured out how to answer. But it was clear to him now. He was no longer merely the son she wanted to protect. He was Jake, an artist yearning to reclaim his voice. With renewed resolve, he needed to confront the deeper struggles lurking in the backdrop of his life. His journey was only just beginning, and the shadows would return. But perhaps now, he could face them with a brush in hand, ready to craft a life that intertwined brushstrokes with the essence of who he was. The warm light of the evening settled around him. Another message lit up the screen. This time, it was a text from Ethan, arriving almost immediately. What more did Ethan have to say? Was it just about the meeting, or was there something deeper he wished to discuss? In that moment, Jake realized he stood on the brink of transformation, a new chapter awaiting his pen. Jake stared at the phone, the screen illuminated with Ethan's latest message. His heart raced as he registered the text, a blend of anticipation and fear curdling in his stomach. "Have you ever questioned what drives your creativity?" It read. "I want to talk about some of my recent ideas before Friday. Let us compare notes." The casual invitation felt like an unexpected twist in the storyline he could barely begin to script. This was not just a meeting about art. It was a deep dive into himself, his motivations, his aspirations, the raw nerve of his creativity. Jake felt unprepared for such openness, yet an undeniable hunger gripped him, the hunger to articulate, to explore, to confront not only his skills but the experiences that shaped them. What if Ethan sought insight into areas Jake hadn't even touched upon? The surface of his artistic world was shaky at best, a pool marred by years of neglect. Fear of inadequacy bubbled up. Could he even hold a meaningful conversation about artistic philosophy? This challenge threatened to push him into depths he wasn't ready to explore, yet the very thought of turning back tightened the air in his chest. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, intense thoughts racing. Who was he besides the corporate figure he had allowed to dominate his identity? What raw potential lay beneath the layers of self-doubt? Evocative memories of his youthful artistry sprang to life, the smell of oil paint permeating the air, the trance-like focus of hours spent blending colors into life. "I can't let the past drown me," he whispered. "I have to embrace it." With newfound resolve, he typed a reply. Let us do it. I'm ready. After sending the message, he paced the living room, his mind racing as Lily's earlier words echoed in his thoughts. Stay true to yourself. Was that really all it took to reclaim his artistry? The journey felt monumental, constricted by years of restricting beliefs, shaped by fear of failure. What had been a sanctuary now loomed like an overcast sky, every brushstroke a reminder of his absence. In an impulsive moment, he took out the easel and dusted off the canvas hidden away in the corner. Could he spark something? He hesitated, paintbrush poised, avoiding the blankness that could stare him down. Grabbing his smartphone, he searched for inspiration, scrolling through images of canvases bursting with life moments frozen in time that screamed of passion and existence. The realization washed over him. He was fully immersed in the process he was planning. What do I want to express? He murmured. The question ignited an ember within him. He felt his fingers trembling with exhilaration as he splashed color onto the canvas. Each movement of his brush felt like both a confrontation and a reconciliation with the artist he lost touch with. Absorbed by the hues, he began to loosen his grip on control, allowing instinct to dictate each stroke. The colors responded, swirling together, developing a narrative of their own. For the first time in years, he was not just creating but breathing life into the sketches hidden within his mind. It felt like flying, both frightening and liberating. The act was simultaneously a reflection and a confrontation of everything he had repressed. As the canvas transformed, Jake caught a glimpse of himself, traces of the artist rekindling. There was so much more to pursue. Inspirations piled upon one another, distilling uncertainties and constructing beliefs he had feared confronted. At that moment, he understood that while the past had shaped him, it did not have to define his future. Just then, the door swung open, and Martha entered, her eyes widening in surprise. Oh, Jake, you're painting? Jake turned, his heart pounding not from fear, but from the surge of life streaming through him. Her presence had the potential to tilt the balance of this metamorphosis he craved. If it came crashing down, it could steal away this fragile momentum. And there it was, the unspoken bridge to both confrontation and understanding. Would she stand in support, or would she question his choices? The answer carried a weight he had long grappled with. I'm trying to find my voice, he finally admitted, his tone heavy with vulnerability. Martha hesitated at the threshold, her halting breath amplifying the tension between them. What would she say? Would she accept this kaleidoscope of change? Jake stood waiting for her response, acutely aware that the stakes had risen significantly. In this moment of truth, he faced the possibility of either stifling the artist within or allowing everything to resonate through the echoes of his past. What are you going to do next? He asked himself internally, conscious that the path ahead held revelations beyond the canvas. And with that, their exchange hung in the air, a cliffhanger of emotions waiting to plunge into new depths. Martha stepped further into the room, the door creaking softly behind her. Jake's heart raced as he anticipated her next words, the weight of the unasked question hanging in the air. He could have easily retreated into the familiar defenses of his corporate persona, a polished mask that sheltered him from vulnerability, but the artist awakening inside him refused to be muted. You're painting. Her voice was laced with a mix of surprise, curiosity, and perhaps a hint of concern. It was both an acknowledgement and a challenge. Jake felt the tremor of uncertainty ripple through him, a reminder of their history, laden with unsaid expectations and long-held beliefs. Yes, I am, he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. I'm trying to reconnect with something I lost. The admission surprised him. It felt like shedding an old skin, raw and liberating. Martha's gaze softened as she moved closer, her eyes studying the canvas that bore witness to his struggle. But why now? She asked, cautious yet intrigued. You've always had other priorities, Jake. The job, the responsibilities, the safe path. The safe path. These words struck him like a blow, reverberating through years of choices made to appease others and meet expectations, his mother's hopes, his own insecurities, the corporate ladder he had climbed so diligently. I think I'm starting to realize that I'm more than just my career, he said, surprising them both with the clarity he felt in that moment. There's a part of me that craves meaningful expression, something real. For the first time in years, Martha appeared taken aback, perhaps wrestling with her understanding of him, as well as confronting her own aspirations that had been buried under the weight of life's demands. What had Jake become, if not the dutiful son she expected? I just never thought you would, she stammered, her initial concern giving way to tentative encouragement. I'm proud, you know, but afraid too. Fear coursed through the air, palpable and urgent. It struck Jake that his path would affect not just him, but the very fabric of their relationship. Jake felt a mixture of pride and vulnerability as he claimed this moment, eager to confront the fears that had long held him captive. What if I'm not good enough? What if this is just another phase? He caught himself, hesitant to expose that raw emotional nerve, yet compelled by the courage building inside. Don't say that, Martha interjected, her voice firm. What you're doing matters, Jake, but you have to own it. You can't let the fear of failure stop you from exploring this part of yourself. Her conviction struck him, illuminating a path he hadn't fully embraced. Uncertainty shifted into conviction, illuminating the narrative he had begun to write on the canvas. Each brushstroke was no longer just about color or art. It was a dialogue with his past self, a reconciliation he was undertaking piece by piece. What if I told you I'm ready to dive deeper? I want to explore more than just painting. I'm considering pursuing classes, workshops, even putting my work out there. The boldness of his confession hung on the air like an electric current, and he felt a swell of determination. Facing the thought of public exhibition, Jake wasn't just exposing his art. He was revealing himself, his vulnerabilities, his truths. It felt frightening yet exhilarating. Martha studied him closely, her expression shifting as if she was recalibrating her perception of her son. You have to promise me something, she said, her voice softened with maternal concern. Don't give in to doubt. Stay true to what you find, even when it gets hard. Jake couldn't help but smile. The small act of vulnerability he had displayed was altering the dynamic of their relationship. Her encouraging words were precisely what he needed. I promise, he replied, feeling lighter. Yet, in his heart, apprehension crept in. What would happen when he truly began unveiling his artistic identity? Would the world accept it, or would it mirror his past failures back at him? With Ethan awaiting their discussion, Jake knew he was teetering on the edge of a vast unknown. What will the next step be? He pondered internally, contemplating not only his burgeoning artistry but the new relationship he was forming with his mother. As the uncertainty settled in, one truth remained clear. To embrace his creativity fully would mean facing the complexities of self-identity and belonging. And so, as their conversation deepened, Jake felt an intense compulsion to articulate his ambitions, each word a thread pulling him closer to the artist he aimed to become. But with the impending dialogue with Ethan looming, one critical question lingered in the back of his mind. Am I ready to face my fears and take the first leap into the unknown? The air felt charged, the moment ripe with potential, pressing him toward the brink of artistic rebirth. Jake stood in silence, the weight of his mother's validation washing over him, but his mind was still racing, caught between possibility and fear. As Martha spoke, he tried to absorb her words, to let them resonate deep within him. He felt a stirring, an urge to move beyond the canvas and explore the territory of his own passions, yet the expectation of what he should be lingered like a shadow. I need to talk to Ethan, he said abruptly, the urgency in his voice surprising even him. The prospect of revealing his new ambitions to his colleague and longtime friend filled him with an unsettling mix of excitement and dread. Martha's expression shifted slightly, understanding the gravity of that imminent conversation. Jake, remember, he may not react the way you hope. This has the potential to change everything, she cautioned, her brow furrowing in concern. It was a reminder that the world outside the sanctuary of his studio held a distinct reality, one that didn't always embrace change. I know, Jake replied, determination hardening his tone. But the only way to own this journey is to face it head-on. Hiding isn't a choice anymore. Every fiber of his being urged him to lean into this newfound commitment. Yet beholding the thought of vulnerability in the eyes of someone so integral to his career, it brought an icy rush of anxiety. Would Ethan understand? Would he regard this transformation as merely a whimsical pursuit, or would he see it as a genuine endeavor? Days passed as Jake prepared for the meeting, filling his time with paint and brushes, pouring out his thoughts onto canvas. Each stroke rooted him deeper within himself, advancing a silent revolution of the mind and spirit. His art was beginning to take shape, an embodiment of his inner dialogue and narrative rooted in conflict, aspiration, and the looming shadows of self-doubt. On the day of his meeting with Ethan, Jake donned the armor of professionalism he had relied upon for years, the crisp blazer, the meticulous grooming, but underneath, his heart raced. For every step he took toward the cafe where they usually met, he felt an internal battle brewing. Conflict surged between the safe path represented by his corporate facade and the uncertain beauty of his artistic aspirations. As he took a seat at their usual table, he rehearsed what he would say, each word a whisper of courage. Ethan arrived, a welcoming smile gracing his features. He slid into the seat across from Jake, his presence a mix of familiarity and pressure. "Hey man, what's up? You seem different." Ethan's brows knitted together, an instinctual awareness that something was brewing beneath Jake's surface. Jake felt the moment crack open, a surge of determination flooding his veins. "I've been doing some thinking," he began, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "I want to talk about my art." Those words hung midair, a pivotal initiation that could either pave the way to liberation or confinement. Ethan's expression transformed, from casual curiosity to a guarded contemplation, as the reality of Jake's pivot pierced through the mundane small talk they often engaged in. "Art, as in painting?" Ethan leaned back, arms crossed, assessing Jake with a mixture of intrigue and skepticism. "Yes," Jake pressed forward, emboldened by the ripple of courage flowing through him. "I've started taking it seriously. I want to explore it more, maybe even share it publicly." Ethan's brow furrowed deeper. The silence felt heavy, and Jake braced himself for the weight of judgment or dismissal. To lay bare this passion felt deeply risky, each word a thread unspooling a larger part of himself, one he had suppressed for too long. "Whoa, that's unexpected," Ethan finally said, the neutrality of his tone pressing against Jake's rising tension. "What's brought this on?" Jake hesitated. Should he open up about the fears and uncertainties that plagued him? Would vulnerability sway Ethan's perspective, or merely intensify the skepticism? "I'm just at a point where I've realized I can't ignore this side of myself anymore. I've been living under other people's expectations." The honesty slipped out before he could fully consider the implications. "I need to pursue this not just for me, but for the ties that bind my identity." In that moment, Jake comprehended the depth of his declaration. The fear of rejection loomed over him, yet the act of stating his truth was both terrifying and liberating. Ethan's response could either tether him further to the corporate chains he sought to shed or offer him a lifeline into the world he truly desired. What if he doesn't understand? Jake thought, anxiety tangling with hope as he awaited Ethan's reply. The seconds stretched, and inside, a question whispered louder than the others. Would this leap of faith cost him everything, or would it carve a path toward a more authentic self? Whatever Ethan's response, Jake knew one truth was immutable. He had already stepped into his own authenticity, and the reverberations of that choice could very well define the contours of his next chapter. Jake's heart thudded in his chest as he stared at Ethan, the cafe bustling around them, but fading into a dull hum. The cafe felt claustrophobic in that moment. Every sip of coffee, every laugh from another table was a reminder of the life he envisioned leaving behind. Ethan's eyes narrowed, calculating, the silence stretching uncomfortably. What makes art any safer or realer than the corporate world? Ethan finally asked, his voice leveling with skepticism. It was a question that plucked at Jake's resolve, planting self-doubt in the soil of his newfound ambition. "I believe it speaks truth more eloquently than any corporate pitch," Jake responded, attempting to control the tremor in his voice. "It's not about safety, it's about being genuine." "Genuine doesn't pay the bills," Ethan retorted, arms still crossed. The challenge in his tone forced Jake to confront the duality between economic security and emotional fulfillment. But what if it could? Jake shot back, ignited by the firestorm brewing within him. What if pursuing this path could lead to financial stability? Art is booming, Ethan. There are avenues for it. Galleries, shows, online sales. Ethan leaned in, eyebrows raised. "You think you'll start selling paintings?" You've barely touched a brush outside of those hobby classes. Jake felt the sting of Ethan's remark, their friendship suddenly feeling like an ice floe. Maybe I can surprise myself, he countered, cold resolve hardening around his vulnerability. Why not believe in the possibility? Because it's a risk, Ethan replied, tilting his head. The matter-of-factness of his response felt like an anchor trying to pull Jake back into familiar waters. You've built a solid career. You can't risk that for a whim. This isn't a classroom, Jake. This is your life. Jake's frustration simmered beneath the surface. Wasn't it more dangerous to dismiss his dreams, to perpetuate the cycle of dissatisfaction? I'm not asking for a handout or approval. I'm taking a chance on myself. The revelation hit him like a splash of cold water. He didn't need Ethan's validation to validate his worth. I'm tired of stifling this side of myself, Jake continued, meeting Ethan's gaze with newfound intensity. I've let fear dictate my choices for too long. Ethan's expression softened, albeit slightly. And what happens if you fail? A year down the line, no sales, no recognition, just you in your studio wondering why you didn't stick to what you knew. Jake clenched his jaw, the reality of that question slicing through the cloud of conviction. The prospect of failure hovered ominously above him, but beneath it lay his inhaled hope. If I don't try, I'll always wonder what could have been, he realized aloud, the thought crystallizing in his mind. Isn't that worse? A ghost of a smile flickered across Ethan's lips, but doubt lingered in his eyes. It's not just about your curiosity. You're potentially jeopardizing everything we've worked for, everything we built together. Think about what you're leaving behind. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This wasn't merely a career shift. It was a complete shift in identity. He glanced around the cafe, people engaged in conversations, consumed by pursuits that felt tangible. What if he stepped into that world fully? Wasn't it worth the risk? It's not just about leaving behind. It's about forging ahead, Jake replied, feeling bolder with each second. I want to connect with something real. Isn't that what life is about? Ethan regarded him, a storm of emotions flickering in his eyes, a mixture of concern, disbelief, and something that resembled respect. This is a big leap, man. Just don't throw everything away. Jake felt the weight of those words settle. This was more than his journey. It was a pivot point that could alter not just his trajectory, but theirs as colleagues and friends. I can't make this decision based on fear, he asserted, his voice firm. For the first time, I'm choosing to pursue the tangible over a shadow. Silence descended again, the kind that begged for resolution. Jake's heart was pounding, adrenaline surging as the moment teetered on a knife's edge. He had placed his truth before Ethan, but would the conversation end with camaraderie or rupture? Finally, Ethan sighed heavily and leaned forward, lowering his voice. If you're sure about this, let us talk ways to make it work. But I need you to promise me to think it through. A wave of relief rushed through Jake, battling the familiar tensions that threaded through his chest. What had started as fear began to morph into possibility. I promise I'll weigh everything. But I also can't promise I want to pursue this. Jake didn't realize how his expression had softened until Ethan grinned, and that hint of camaraderie swelled just enough to be a balm on his fears. Yet, as they navigated into practical discussions, the gnawing question still lingered. In pursuing authenticity, what would Jake have to sacrifice? And what shadows he might unearth in fully embracing this journey only time could reveal. Jake left the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose, but a weight still clung to him. The sun hung low, casting a golden hue over everything, a stark contrast to the storm of doubt brewing inside. The exhilarating thrill of possibility coursed through him, yet suffocating uncertainty gnawed at the edges of his mind. As he reached the entrance of his apartment, he paused. What awaited him inside? Would he embrace this new identity, or would the old, familiar comforts call him back? He pushed the door open and stood in the dim light, confronting the chaos of his apartment, piles of paperwork scattered across the dining table, half-finished sketches tossed aside. A canvas loomed against the wall, blank and mocking. The remnants of a life structured by routine, bound by choice. And yet, there lay the potential for something transformative. Jake wandered around the space, searching for clarity. He felt drawn to the canvases he kept, hidden remnants of his aspirations that had been shelved, swept under the carpet of practicality. Dust motes danced in the air, catching the light and blinking at him like lost dreams begging for realization. It was time to wipe away that dust. It was time to confront the artist within. He settled on the floor with a sketchbook, heart racing, flipping pages adorned with half-formed ideas, doodles betraying richness of thought and emotion. Each stroke was a meditation, grounding him while allowing his imagination to roam free. Suddenly, he felt the urge to paint. No rules, no expectations, just raw expression. Mixing colors on a palette, Jake lost himself in the act. Each movement of the brush felt electrifying. Swirls of blues and greens spun into a whirlwind, shapes morphing into abstract forms that breathed life into his thoughts. Jake wasn't just painting. He was bridging gaps between anxiety and creativity, past and future. In this art, he found himself, unguarded and vulnerable. The catharsis coursed through him, invigorating resolve into his being. Yet, a flicker of fear remained. What if the world outside rejected what he created? What if it reflected back at him everything he feared? His inadequacies laid bare? But he pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the simple truth. This was his expression, untethered from the confines of market, approval, or validation. As he stepped back to evaluate the piece, something unexpected unfolded. A moment of clarity. The colors merged seamlessly into a visual journal of self-discovery. He saw in his work not just an artist, but a man reclaiming his identity, step by step. Evening descended, wrapping Jake in its cool embrace. He rinsed the brush, contemplating his newfound freedom. Yet, with lucidity came a humbling reality. It was one thing to create, and another to share. He needed to step out to have the courage to present his work to the world. His thoughts spiraled toward Ethan and their earlier conversation. Would he support this new direction? Or would he still voice concerns that pressed on Jake's vulnerability? Either way, one thing was certain. Jake needed to find out. The risk wasn't merely in creating art, but in revealing himself to others' friends, family, and the broader community. Underneath the surface, unease coiled tightly. He hadn't yet explained his change of course to his employer, nor had he brought it up with anyone else. What if they dismissed his pursuits as childish whims? Nonetheless, Jake realized this might be not just about art, it was also about the connection to those who mattered most to him. With a storm brewing in his chest, Jake made a decision. He would take his work to the local gallery, face the scrutiny of an audience, and show them not only the art, but the artist, the person behind the canvas. It was time to ignite conversations and invite others into his evolving narrative. As Jake set about preparing for this next step, he felt uncertainty cut through him like a cold wind. Would the world understand his artistic evolution? The challenge ahead now felt daunting, but also exhilarating. He was ready to confront those questions. He was ready to face whatever judgments awaited him. In the quiet of his apartment, Jake sensed he was standing on the brink of something bigger than a mere choice of profession. Little did he know that the art he created would soon reveal not only truths about himself, but secrets buried deep within the community he thought he knew so well. The moment to unmask was approaching, and it was going to demand everything he had. Jake awoke the next morning to the muffled sounds of the bustling city outside his window. The faint smell of coffee wafted through the air, reminding him of a familiarity he was almost ready to leave behind. Today was the day he had resolved to confront the expectations of his life, to share his art, to show his truth. He sat at the edge of his bed and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision settle over him. As he prepared for the day, the routine felt different. Each motion, brushing his teeth, pulling on a shirt, became a ritual tinged with significance. The nervous energy pulsated within him, urging him to create a mental plan for how he would approach Ethan and the gallery. Thoughts raced through his mind. What would he say? How would he frame his new identity? Would he be met with enthusiasm or judgment? After splashing water on his face, he headed to the dining table, now slightly tidier in anticipation of his artistic venture. He took a seat, flipping through his sketchbook. Each page was a testament to the journey he had embarked upon, the flickers of creativity that had set him alight. In that moment, he understood that it wasn't merely about showing his work. It was about revealing parts of himself that had long been under wraps. The thought ignited a flicker of fear. What if exploring this identity came with unforeseen consequences? He quickly quashed the thought, channeling it instead into motivation. He began rewriting the dialogue he would have with Ethan, forthright, confident, unyielding. Jake longed for validation, yes, but more than that, he craved understanding. After pacing around his small apartment, he reached for his phone to text Ethan. He typed and erased a message several times before finally landing on something raw but genuine. "Hey, can we meet later? I want to show you something important." He hesitated before hitting send, every second stretching into an eternity. Uncertainty loomed, but clarity emerged too. Showing Ethan his art meant inviting his closest friend into this uncharted territory of his life. The day dragged on, with each tick of the clock amplifying both his anticipation and anxiety. Finally, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that danced along the walls. Jake stared at his art, still unfinished. Knowing he needed to express himself fully before presenting it to Ethan, he grabbed his palette and brushes again, letting the colors speak for him. Every stroke processed his emotions: fear, excitement, vulnerability, until the piece began to transform into something profound. The canvas told a story of rebirth, showcasing the internal struggle of self-acceptance and the desire to transcend the mundane. It was a layer of him he was finally ready to expose. Jake stepped back to observe the transformation. Fragments of doubt receded as a semblance of hope emerged. It was more than just an artistic endeavor. It was the very composition of who he was becoming. However, the moment was fleeting as a sense of urgency gripped him. He needed to finish the piece before confronting Ethan. It felt critical somehow. As he lost himself again in the painting, a sudden peal of laughter from outside his window jolted him back to reality. A reminder of the life outside, vibrant and unsparing. He felt the weight of expectation resurface. He wasn't just an artist now. He was a person inviting scrutiny and judgment woven deeply into the fabric of friendship. With night mooring itself solidly in the sky, Jake inhaled deeply to steady his racing heart. He could feel the turning point ahead. This wasn't just going to be about art, but a reflection of courage in its rawest form. As he packed the artwork carefully, preparing for the impending confrontation, Jake sensed that crossing this threshold would demand every ounce of him. Would revealing his true self to Ethan grant him the support he needed, or would it backfire? He glanced one last time at the canvas before grabbing his bag. The moment had come to step beyond his fears. Little did he know, the conversation awaiting him would turn into a crossroads, one not just between acceptance and rejection, but an unveiling that would stretch far beyond his expectations. The door swung open, revealing the tangled threads of their friendship where trust might either bind them closer or irrevocably alter the course of their lives forever. Jake stood at the entrance of the art gallery, the polished floors and shimmering lights reflecting his heightened sense of anticipation. Today wasn't merely about sharing his creations. It felt like a culmination of everything he had fought for: the rekindling of his identity as an artist and the final step into a life he was building on his terms. The nervousness that had enveloped him all day was now a steady hum, an electric pulse infused with both excitement and the weight of what he was about to do. As the moment approached to unveil his artwork to Ethan and the broader audience, he felt empowered, a stark transformation from the hesitant man he once was. For months, he had painted diligently, channeling fragments of his soul onto the canvas. Each stroke, each palette of colors, spoke of self-discovery and breaking free from a life dictated by corporate sensibilities. He recalled the countless nights spent painting through self-doubt and apprehension, igniting a spark inside him that he believed long extinguished. The gallery represented a literal and metaphorical openness, an invitation into his world as an artist. When Ethan arrived, Jake's heart raced. "Hey, glad you could make it," he said, a veneer of casual confidence wrapping around him even as he grappled with vulnerability lurking beneath. Ethan's presence was unwavering, a lifeline to his past. Yet today Jake felt resolved to present the man he had become. As they walked through the gallery, people admired the various artworks on display, but Jake's focus narrowed to a singular piece that had captured his essence: the very work he would present to Ethan. Made during the brink of his rediscovery, the painting embodied his journey from doubt to self-affirmation. "This one," Jake gestured, his voice steady, "is called Unveiling Myself. It's about the process of breaking free and acknowledging the artist I never allowed myself to be. Ethan scrutinized the painting, his expression guarded yet curious. It's bold, he remarked, tilting his head. There's a lot going on here. Jake's heart raced. It's layers of emotion. Each color tells part of my story, the fears I overcame, the desires I've hidden. It's raw. It's real. Ethan continued his analysis, nodding slowly and letting Jake's passion permeate the air between them. You've really poured yourself into this. Yet even as he sensed Ethan's growing appreciation, Jake grappled with apprehension. Was this merely a passing moment or a step toward validation? The opportunity to express his newfound identity was close enough to touch, but acceptance from Ethan felt monumental in defining his next steps. Jake, Ethan finally said, breaking the silence. You've done something incredible here. But what's next? This isn't just a hobby anymore, right? Jake felt a pulse of determination and clarity surge within him. He nodded. No, it's not. I want to exhibit more, continue creating, and share my work with people, possibly even put my pieces up for sale or host workshops. His voice resonated with conviction, each word ushering forth the vision he had cultivated in private. Ethan appeared taken aback. Workshops? He furrowed his brow. That's a big leap. You're ready for that? Jake's heart tightened at the doubt behind the question, yet he remained unfazed. Not just ready, I've waited long enough. It's time to take ownership of my art. Trusting this process is part of my journey. A moment of silence followed, and Jake could feel the potential shift in their dynamic. A bridge was being built, but would it hold? I see the transformation in you, and I respect the dedication it took to reach this point, Ethan said, searching Jake's eyes for sincerity. But you need to understand there are risks. The art market is unpredictable. Just make sure you're prepared. Jake inhaled deeply, recognizing the protective undertone, a palpable echo from their past dialogue. I know the risks, Ethan, but I've come to learn that it's worth it to pursue authenticity. What's life without embracing uncertainty? Ethan nodded slowly, perhaps realizing the weight that Jake's choices would carry. If you're truly committed, I'll support you. Let me help you navigate these waters. But you'll need to launch this with a clear vision, all right? Jake felt a rush of gratitude. A resolution was found in his mentor's understanding. I appreciate that, man. This isn't just about me anymore. I want to create art that resonates with others. The atmosphere lightened, and a spark of hope lit within him. They spent the rest of the evening discussing plans, exhibitions, potential collaborations, and how to navigate the channels that would connect Jake's art with the outside world. As the gallery night drew to a close, Jake stood before the canvas once more, basking in a fullness he hadn't felt in years. The fears were still there, but now they sat beside his courage, an intrepid partnership forged through resilience. He was ready to claim his space in the artistic landscape. The future was no longer an uncertain fog. It held the promise of fulfillment, a life infused with art, expression, and authenticity. Jake had conquered not just the fear of rejection, but embraced the importance of pursuing passion relentlessly. No longer simply a corporate cog, he was an artist reborn. The journey had just begun, and it was significant. Today was not an end, but a beginning, a vibrant step toward all he had always aspirated to be. Now, if you were inspired by Jake's journey and determined to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support, and leave a like immediately to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's next steps. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative conclusion.